War. And these stories seem to just drift out of the novel. So I kept them, and when I finished with the novel, I put them all together and published them in one different wars, and people are suffering. Basically, these stories loom around one sort of subject. It's how much we are unaware of the violence that's undercurrent, that's living with us, that's living beside us, in us, and we don't know it. And suddenly we're faced by it, and people are very violent. They are probably the most violent creatures on earth. So this is what these stories are about. And
land in a world of concrete and rubbish. It's unwelcomed by the shell-struck skeleton trees transformed into snipers' targets. Migrated. Others have fled, grabbing whatever they could and leaving behind their homes for the first squatters and break down the door. 2 years pass, and I become the only tenant, the only legal tenant. At any hour of the night, squatters could knock waste. And from 7 in the morning, he sits and he works, his pockets filled with gold. He'll have the best girl, or else it's the end of the world. My brother Anwar sang these verses the night we celebrated the return of Saeed Badur. He'd been in Australia for 20 years and he'd come back to look for a bride. He chose me. But my work in Beirut, my future, and my resentment for customs that consider a woman an accessory made it impossible for me to even consider accepting his proposal.
Zaire had taken control of the area, and his men had constantly baited and harassed George. It was nerve-wracking. One day, a shell had exploded near Abu Zaire's barracks, and a piece of shrapnel embedded itself in his left buttock. Hundreds of bombs fell that day, but miraculously none in our street. This miracle, though, had a price to be paid. Abu Zaire was quite mortified by the indignity of being hit in the backside, and was on the lookout for a scapegoat. Damn him, he picked on George. He started a rumour that spread like a cancer over the whole neighbourhood that George, who knew the district so well, every little nook and cranny, every little alleyway and street, had supplied the other side with precise information about the probable position of Abu Zaire's buttocks. There is no green line. And then I started whistling and mimicking George's walk. His crooked walk and his pointed leather shoes had earned him the nickname of George Presley. Hello. Scanned notice. Room 42. The corridors were crowded and smelt. Pale faces. Their eyes reminded me of Ashura. Room 42, room 42. Where was room 42? I'd gone straight past it. I ran back and put...
Lots of students go through periods of absenteeism prior to exams. It's the pressure. Oh, and when she does come home, don't be too hard on her. Keep me posted. Quickly, I finished the soup. I tidied up the kitchen and I hung up the washing. And then I went into her bedroom, desperate for clues as to where she might have gone. Her diary. There's contracts between France and the Gulf. So I rented this apartment. I found a school that Nusa could go to.
The story is called The Last Roundabout. It survived unscathed. From the landing, I could see the afternoon sun shining through a little window, lighting the thick dust on the surface of the wood table. I couldn't make out any sign of it. Auntie Huda was huddled on a straw mat, covered with a blanket, her pulse placed in my hand. And without saying a word, hugged me, squeezing me tight to him. His image returned, and frightened, I squeezed Abdo's arm. "Don't," he whispered. "Please." He stared into space, lost and alone, retreating.
Sing. In your hand, a broken sword, like the spirit behind those eyes on wharves and ports. How not to scent the sweat of all these children. Quick.
Line, which is the last house between the two fighting factions. And he, I don't know why, he decided to stay there all the time. Beirut and couldn't visit you. Snipers were active. Come back tomorrow. Not even this fall. As soon as we landed, I wanted to kneel and kiss the soil, wanted to cry. But bit by bit, war, shelling, ambulances, explosions, I couldn't even walk the streets. My friends had either emigrated or moved or died. Only the radio still barked on our civilization, our alphabet, our seafaring traditions. Of course, you know all this. You couldn't escape like me. Your children were born between the bullets. They hear explosions instead of birds. And like you, cheek in hand, they listen to the news. I wish you could send us these children. They could breathe fresh air and meet children who never listen to the news.